Moving forward, though, on what we learned about this terror attack in London that killed 2 people, this Islamic jihadist terror attack, I want to tell you something. I find this simply mind-blowing, and so I have the actual language for you from this. But in England, they have elections, fortunately, like we have elections. There is a leader of the Labour Party, and think of the Labour Party as just like the Democrats or the leftists. The Labour Party is the leftist party in England. The head of the Labour Party is named Jeremy Corbyn. He did an interview in January of this year, so coming up almost a year ago. But he did an interview on Iranian state television. Iran, the single largest terror exporting country in the world, Jeremy Corbyn did an interview on Iranian television in his capacity as the leader of the Labour Party in Britain, and actually said on air, Israel is behind the Islamic terror attacks. Israel is behind the Islamic terror attacks. Israel is behind global terrorism done in order to destabilize the Middle East. Okay, this is the same problem we have in America. We have leftists in our country sympathetic to jihadists, apologetic to jihadists, explaining why they can't help themselves is everybody else's fault except for the fault of the person committing the crimes. So this Jeremy Corbyn, head of the Labour Party, actually said this, that the terror you see in the world, all these jihadist attacks you see, the thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed in just the last 20 years by people yelling Allahu Akbar and telling us they are acting based on the teachings of Islam. Oh, no. Jeremy Corbyn is explaining for all of you ignorant people out there, you can't really blame Islam. It's all the fault of Israel, don't you know? The fault of the Jews. And if you think, so you might think, okay, Jeremy Corbyn's not, but that's a British leftist. What about the American leftists? Let me just tell you something. I did not realize this until just a few days ago, but one of the primary candidates, one of the leaders in the Democrat presidential race for the nomination to run for president in 2020, Bernie Sanders, actually works. He's set up callers and his working to help Jeremy Corbyn. Bernie Sanders is supporting Jeremy Corbyn. Now you might think, okay, well, it's kind of like political parties, Democrats might support the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn delusionally tells the world that Islam is not the problem, it's all the Jews. The astounding level of anti-Semitism that just feeds the American left and the British left, blaming Israel for what the Islamic jihadists do. And Bernie Sanders, campaigners for U.S. presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders, lend their support to the Labour Party, running phone banking sessions from New York ahead of the general election. The city's branch of Labour International has been working with Democrat Socialists of America, calling on British campaigners with tips of how to encourage people how to register to vote and to cast a vote for the Labour Party. So you have the leftists in England enabling this idiocy of this terrorist, jihadist, getting out of jail, finding reasons to hold seminars. Let him come and lecture us about how important it is to understand the evils of actually sending this killer to jail. And then you have, on our side of the pond, as they say, you have Bernie Sanders, the guru of the left, the endorsed candidate of the Democrat Socialists of America, over here helping Corbyn and his ilk win their races. So, next thing I want to tell you about. So, I want to get to what I called this section about what's the American Islamization, or Islamization of America, a progress report. I'm going to run through about 5 or 6 stories of things happening in today in America because we are too asleep at the wheel to identify the problem. We are echoing or parroting the problem that England faces. You saw that Police Commissioner Cressida Dick could not say Islamic. She couldn't identify the source of the ideology. And I'll be really clear about this. When I'm talking about what's happening in America today, I am not talking about every Muslim who lives in America. I am talking about the fundamental teachings of Islam. That anyone who cares about the issue should go read for yourself. The fundamental teachings of Islam from the Quran, from the time of Muhammad's presence on earth, from the fact that he led raids, killing innocent people because the kill or convert the infidels was woven into the fabric of Islam. It's from the founding of Islam. It's what devout Muslims have done. It's why we had the astonishing conquering of large swaths of land, moving out from the area where Islam was founded, from the Mecca and Medina area, and moving out into that part of the world, spreading around. Islam was not spread by sharing love and truth and peace. It was shared by convert, pray the Shahada, which is the conversion to Islam, or we'll slit your throat. That's how Islam got spread. That's how Islam grew. So now you have, to be clear what I'm talking about in America, I'm talking about the idea of Islamic supremacism, the idea not that everyone has a right to religion, their freedom of religion, but the idea in Islam that you have the right to force your religion on others. You have the right to force Sharia, Islamic law, on others. You have the obligation to spread Islam in any way possible. Force, duplicity, manipulation, in secret. You can do anything, but your goal, if you are a devout Muslim, is to spread Islam to ultimately bring the entire world into submission. So we have a problem with Sharia, and again, it's the ideology of Islam I am talking about. It is Sharia. It is also important to get this point about Islam. We love our First Amendment in America. We love religious freedom. But you need to understand that Islam is unlike any other religion on this planet. Islam has religious beliefs to it. It also is a complete political system intended to replace the governance in the countries that it overtakes. Replace secular government, replace representative government with Islamic law, with Sharia, with the final deciders not being judges, elected or appointed, but Islamic clerics. This is the point of spreading Islam. So it is not just a religion, it's a political ideology, it is a military ideology, it is a legal ideology. It is when you embrace all of Islam, you must surrender all other religions, all secular government. And I'm, again, not saying every Muslim in America is engaged in this, but the ones who engage in the conduct we're going to talk about are on this path. So, to hit a few quick stories, within the U.S. Government, we have the Trump administration, who's been great on terror in some ways, great on trying to change or did change the standards about who can come here and the refugee status and the visas, and trying to be sure we don't bring more terrorists here. But within the White House, just a couple months ago, at the end of September, we had President Trump hosting a faith-based safety and security symposium, faith-based safety and security symposium at the White House, which included Islamic movement leader Osama Jamal, we'll get to him in a moment, who is the Secretary General of the U.S. Council on Muslim Organizations. This is a Muslim political party in this country, USCMO, the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations. They're a political party. They are tied at the hip to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a terror-authorizing, terror-agitating, terror-urging organization. So Muslim Brotherhood gets behind the formation of a Muslim political party, and they're in the White House with President Trump. Also in the White House, you have the executive director of CARE, which you've heard me talk about many times on the show, the Council on American Islamic Relations. That guy, executive director, Nihad Awad. You got to understand, CARE was formed. CARE was founded by the top Hamas, terror organization Hamas officials in the U.S. in 1994. So you have this Islamic supremacist mindset in the White House in September of this year. And so I'm going to run through, that was number one, a bunch of examples of the Islamic takeover of America happening under our eyes, before our eyes, and we have to be far more wide awake than the Metropolitan Police Chief in London, Cressida Dick, and far and ahead of all the way much of Western civilization deals with Islam. We have to begin to be able to say, the problem is not every Muslim. Terrorism is a problem. Terrorists are a problem, but the ideology itself is the problem. We have to have more officials acknowledging this. The ideology, that supremacist mindset that says, as they are instructed in Islam to say, that Islam simply must be supreme over all others. So I'll hit a bunch of other little stories. That one we had, we had jihadists, we had Islamic supremacists in the White House at a happy talk. Again, the name of it, the meeting at the White House was the Faith-Based Safety and Security Symposium. Okay, so we had arrested in Brooklyn last week, Brooklyn and New York City, and alleged the guy was arrested and because what they found about he had written on social media. He's an ISIS supporter. He pledged his support to ISIS twice, once in July of this year, and then again renewed his commitment in October following the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. This guy, and I didn't get his picture for you. He's kind of scary looking, but very American looking. This is not a Middle Eastern guy. His name is Zachary Clark, but he converted to Islam. He became an ISIS supporter, and he was arrested in New York City. At least, fortunately, they found him. Arrested in New York City for plotting and putting online explanations for how to blow up the New York City subway system. And he even had a cutesy little video called How to Make a Bomb in the Kitchen of Your Mom. Like he's a poet too, I guess. But the point is, these people are in this country. And, the police always try to say, and they said it in London too, about this Khan guy who was the killer on Friday. They say the expression, well, he's not associated with any, he's a lone wolf. He's not associated with any other terror groups. He's not particularly associated with, or not. And so they're trying to say, don't worry about it because he's not part of, whatever, Al-Qaeda or ISIS. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you convert to Islam and you follow the teachings in the Quran that say you must kill or convert infidels. It doesn't matter if you never met another Muslim in your whole life, or if you are living in a hotbed of terrorism in somewhere, wherever you are, and surrounded by terrorists. It's the ideology that is the problem. So fortunately, this guy was arrested, and he actually, on one of this Zachary Clark guy arrested in Brooklyn in New York City, I pledged support to ISIS, and he actually went online to talk about the need to do knife attacks, and you can't get all squeamish. Here are his words. Discomfort at the thought of plunging a sharp object into another person's flesh is never an excuse for abandoning jihad. So, a guy in America, fortunately located by police and tracked down and arrested before he did anything, but putting online all sorts of explanations, maps of the subway system, explanations how to secret your bombs in there, how to make the bombs. This guy in America, it's the ideology. You also had a man who came to America because we were kind enough to bring him in as a refugee, came here from Bosnia, and he lived in the state of Missouri, but he also aided ISIS. He got involved, and fortunately, the police found him. So he came to the U.S. from Bosnia, sentenced to 8 years in prison for supporting terrorists, including an ISIS leader in Syria. Plans are he's going to serve his 8 years in prison and then be deported. So this idea that if we bring people to America and we show them how great American society is and how beautiful and free and safe a society based on Judeo-Christian values can be, that maybe the terrorist segment of Islam will realize, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't live in America. No way. This guy, and again, he's sent off to prison for 8 years, and he was online. There's a very scary picture of him too. Honestly, these people just look so angry. But he sent cash and military equipment to several Mideastern countries between 2013 and 2015 to help further ISIS's efforts. One little update in a story we did several weeks ago, months ago. I hadn't realized this until I was getting ready for today's show. Remember we talked about the woman who was born in America. Her dad was a diplomat from Yemen. So he was in our country, as a diplomat from Yemen. She went off to be a jihadi wife. She grew up in America. She abandoned America. She went overseas. She married some jihadist. She had a kid with some jihadist before the jihadist was killed. And now that ISIS is finally contained and controlled, she's living in a refugee camp in Syria, and she wants to come back to America. And she's saying, really, really, really sorry. And I didn't mean really to do that. And so I really wish you would give me a break. Her name was Hoda Muthana. So I did not realize there was a recent court ruling, November 14th, where the judge said no, actually, because her argument was her dad. Okay, the law says if you're a diplomat in America, if your reason for your presence in America is you're a diplomat, that U.S. citizenship does not attach to a baby born in America if the reason they were born here is that your one parent or the other is a diplomat. So she was saying, yeah, but by the time I was born, my dad was finished being a diplomat. So he was still here, and he wasn't officially a diplomat anymore, so I get to come home. And some court said, no, thank you, Hoda Muthana, you cannot come back here. And the court basically just said, even though her dad may have finished his official duties, America had not yet relieved him of his diplomatic status, had not ended his diplomatic status when she was born, so she's not coming back. Okay. Other stories about the unbelievable assault on America, Islamization, and the need to be wide awake so we don't have more and more attacks like what happens in London and all over Western Europe. There is, in addition to violent jihad, which we see so many stories about, there's also jihad in the form of cultural or civilizational jihad. We've talked about this many times. That term, civilizational jihad or civilization jihad, was a term created by the Muslim Brotherhood for the organizations they planted on the ground in America, a secret Muslim Brotherhood document that fortunately, through a long story I'm not going to go into today, but came to the attention of U.S. authorities, was admitted into evidence in the federal prosecution of the here in Texas, actually, just outside of Dallas, of one of the terror sponsoring organizations here in Texas. Point is, Muslim Brotherhood went to the trouble of writing a memorandum, an explanatory memorandum, in which they talked about how Islam is going to take over America. They used the expression civilization jihad. They're basically saying the Muslim Brotherhood is not strong enough to militarily conquer America, but we can conquer America through the use of civilization or cultural or civilizational invasion, adjustment, pressure is a combination of tactics. We've talked about in this show many times. If you're not familiar about this at all, you can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com. I can send you links to read so you get up to speed in this. But the point is, in Europe, we had various zones all over Western Europe and in England that are established as no-go zones. And they are zones in which Islamic refugees set up a concentrated area of just people who are adherents of Islam. And in those areas, slowly but surely, the refugees demand that Sharia be the law in those areas instead of the law of whatever their host country is. And so we have these all over Europe, all over the UK. Great book written by Raheem Kassam called No-Go Zones. If you haven't read that, you got to read it because he documented it. In fact, he documented it so thoroughly that Angela Merkel, the head of Germany, had to say, she had previously been saying in the press, there are no such thing as no-goes. That's just baloney. He made that up. So Raheem Kassam researches, goes and visits them, writes down the facts and the descriptions and the details all over Europe, including Germany, forcing Angela Merkel to say, actually, yes, we do have no-go zones. They say no-go, meaning they are deciding Sharia is in place there in those zones and that the law of the land doesn't apply, and therefore the police cannot enter without permission of the leaders of those Sharia-compliant communities. The police can't enter, fire people can't enter, emergency crews can't enter. People who are in their own home country cannot walk freely in the streets in these no-go zones because they are taunted, attacked, and harassed because they don't comply with Sharia in the way they dress. So with that background, turning to New York City, in Brooklyn, there is and Staten Island, growing Islamic communities that are becoming no-go zones. One thing in particular that happened, and I got to give great credit to the Clarion Project. If you don't ever go to the Clarion Project, it's clarionproject.org, and they did a big long piece about the Muslim Community Patrol and Services. So I want to show you first. Matt the Wonderful has a clip I sent, a picture I sent him. The first one, let me make sure. This is clip 4. Quick picture to show you what clip 4 is. This is a picture of the way police cars look in New York City. That's a New York City police car. Clip 5 is the Muslim patrol car. So we get clip 5 up there, the Muslim patrol car. same color, same look. So what is happening in neighborhoods in Brooklyn and in Staten Island is that Muslims are putting in place their own patrol cars and patrolling the areas they're claiming as their own. Now, they tried to say in the beginning, it's just to help the police because, we can drive around and, we speak the language, the people are more comfortable, they'll open up to us. We're trying to help the police. And then they got into saying, well, now we're kind of more here to protect the Muslim community. We don't know who might try to hurt them, so we're here to protect them. But there was a great story in Clarion, it's linked on our website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop down list of links. In this story, Clarion reports about a meeting that was held among Muslim leaders of the mosques, the imams, and leaders within each of those mosques held a big meeting in New York City to argue about this Muslim Community Patrol and Services, MCPS, because the people who put it in place were wanting those patrol cars to patrol every area they're trying to stake out as Muslim only or going to turn into a no-go zone. Some of the mosques were saying, hey, you know what? Some of our people aren't that comfortable. So we don't really want, we didn't invite you guys in our neighborhood. We don't really want this. I just want to tell you, so they had in this meeting of all these leaders of the mosque in New York City, Clarion Project had someone who was there undercover and listening to the meeting, reporting what was happening. And the bottom line, there's a lot to learn about this story, but the bottom line before I shift off my next story for today is this. In the meeting, one of the most sinister, well-known, radical jihadists, total Islamic supremacist imams named Siraj Wahhaj. Siraj Wahhaj, in the meeting, is saying, no, the purpose of these Muslim patrol cars is to enforce Sharia, is to make sure that young men aren't drinking alcohol. You can't drink alcohol in Islam. Young women are properly covered. This is the beginning of Islamization in America. So these kind of cars, this kind of attitude, and how America responds to it. Last piece on the Islamization of America, and I know I ran through a bunch, but they're really important to understand. Two last pieces. One is the astonishing millions and millions and millions of dollars being spent by Sharia-compliant Muslim-majority countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to say it, Q-A-T-A-R. Those two countries and other Islamic-majority Sharia-compliant countries are spending millions and millions of dollars investing in American universities so that the universities, and these are stellar, premier universities, ones where parents would be so proud your kid was accepted. Wow, this is so cool. Junior got into this great school. Setting up Islamic centers, supposedly for the purpose of helping to spread love and understanding and respect for Islam and mutual respect, Islam and Christianity or Islam and Judeo-Christianity. And the point of it really is they are teaching, there is another form of Islamization, another form of deluding America into thinking that Islam is a religion of peace and that all the jihadists, whatever they do, is somehow contorting Islam. It is to spread not just understanding, but the eventual use, as we went back, I said, early on in this discussion, the point of Islam is to spread Islam by force, duplicity, or any other means necessary to bring the world into submission to Islam. There are thousands, in fact, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Muslims who still think this can happen. This is Islamization of universities. Last story, in the college called Oberlin in Ohio, they had the Islamic Student Organization put up statues honoring 6 murderous jihadists. I want you to think about if some student group put up statues honoring, white supremacists or, Nazis or black nationalists, anyone with a racist, murderous intent, it wouldn't be permitted. It wouldn't be tolerated. But Oberlin, a radically left school anyway, they let the Muslim Student Organization erect statues to honor murderous jihadists. Friends, I'll close out this segment by saying this. It's not like the evidence is not right in front of America. We do have a choice of the future of our country. We do have a choice of how firmly, strongly, and resolutely we're willing to say publicly there will never be Sharia in America, no Sharia allowed, allowed. Sharia is inconsistent with our Constitution, it's inconsistent with our rule of law, and we're never going to permit Sharia here. We need to have more and more politicians, elected officials saying that the ideology of Islam, the conquest ideology of Islam, is evil. It needs to be called evil. The conquest ideology of Islam must be called out as evil. When people commit jihadist terrorist attacks, we can't just say terror, the ideology of terror. We have to name it for the same reason we are right to name the evil of white supremacy, the evil of black nationalism. Call the ideology for what it is.